Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a bit of a detour through the central business district of Kampala. And we're doing something that, well, it might feel a little radical. We're completely ignoring the massive marketing budgets, the glossy billboards.
Right, because we got something pretty special in front of us. Raw transactional sales data, straight from the CBD liquor market. This data comes courtesy of Edward Boger's market intelligence resource, the Sales Ledger. Really valuable stuff.
Yeah, so our mission here is pretty simple. Look at the cold, hard receipts. We're digging into what distributors, hotels, and, crucially, cafandas, those small independent street vendors and local bars serving the everyday person, what they were actually buying. We're focused on just the first 5 days of October here. This is proof, actual transactions, not just what people say they buy in a survey.
Okay, let's unpack this, because honestly, this unfiltered data reveals some counterintuitive trends, stuff that really shatters the conventional wisdom about what drives sales, velocity in a busy city center. Exactly. This isn't theory. It's what the cash registers were actually ringing up. This kind of market intelligence, it's usually kept behind closed doors, right, for internal strategy. So it gives us this unparalleled look at genuine consumer preference in what's a really dynamic and, frankly, intensely competitive market.
Right. So when you think about what dominates sales velocity, say, in a major city center,
Yeah.
what comes to mind first? Probably premium spirits, I'd guess.
Yeah.
Expensive gin, maybe high-end vodka, things that look good on a fancy cocktail menu.
You'd think so, but the data, well, it tells a different story. A much, much sweeter story, actually.
It really does, doesn't it? The first major discovery, the one that just immediately resets your expectations, is the immense and consistent sales volume of affordable sweet wine. It's like this unexpected quiet king of volume, totally flying under the radar of the big ad campaigns. And we saw specific repeat evidence right there in the ledger, multiple large volume purchases. We're talking up to full cases, 12 bottles at a time for the real mainstays in this category. Brands like Four Cousins Sweet Red Wine, Cellar Cask Sweet Red Wine, and Robertson Wine.
And this is where the who becomes really important. These purchases, they aren't being made by just one type of buyer. Not at all. They're coming from mobile stockists, from liquor stores, and even supermarkets.
Yeah.
That tells you this product is destined for, well, mass distribution. Immediate accessibility right across the city.
Okay, but let me just play devil's advocate for a second here. If that much sweet wine is moving, could it just be a blip, a temporary sales spike?
Sure.
Maybe, one massive catering order for a big weekend event or something?
That's a critical question, absolutely. But the consistency, looking across those first 5 days of October, it strongly indicates this isn't just a spike. It looks much more like a steady stream of demand. And the implication there, well, for distributors, it's huge. It means the biggest inventory risk might not be running out of your high-margin premium whiskey. It might actually be underestimating the sheer volume needed for this accessible sweet category. So accessibility and a flavor profile that just appeals really broadly seem to be the key drivers of pure velocity here, almost regardless of the price tag. And that focus on flavor, it doesn't just stop with sweet wine, does it? It shows up just as powerfully when you look at creams and liqueurs. Which brings us neatly to a second kind of powerful finding. Liqueurs and creams are actually a mainstream powerhouse. They're far from being just some niche, after-dinner drink category.
Yeah, the sales ledger is just filled with consistent orders. Across a surprisingly wide range, too. We're seeing Amarula Baileys, Jägermeister, even April. Now, obviously, these serve different social situations, different moments, but they all share that strong, flavor-forward characteristic. It seems to tap right into that same demand for sweetness, or at least approachability, that we saw with the wines.
And again, look at the diversity of the buyers. It's instructive. These are being purchased regularly by distributors, yes, but also by bars. And critically, we noted one specific hotel establishment making multiple repeated purchases of Baileys, just Baileys, multiple times. What's fascinating here is when you take them together, the sales data for the affordable sweet wines and these cream liqueurs, it definitively points towards a massive consumer segment in Kampala, a segment that strongly favors sweeter, more flavor-forward profiles. So if a business strategy is focusing purely on the dry, complex, maybe the traditional end of the drink spectrum, well, it's potentially overlooking where the bulk of the actual market transactions are happening.
Interesting. That strong distinction, then, between this high-volume sweet market and maybe more high-value brand-conscious market, it leads us quite neatly into the whiskey segment, doesn't it? Because here, the data doesn't reveal one single monolithic market at all. It shows a really sharp, almost strategic division.
It really does. It's a perfect demonstration of market sophistication, actually. You've clearly got the volume segment. This part of the market is very price-driven. You see merchant wholesalers buying massive, repeatable quantities of accessible blended Scotch whiskies, things like famous Grouse and Grants. And this stock is obviously meant for wide distribution, fast turnover, consumption where the budget is probably the primary driver.
Right. And then on the complete flip side, you got the value segment. These are your specialized liquor stores, maybe the higher-end bars that are really focusing on the experience. They're the ones buying the premium single malts we specifically saw, the full range of the Macallan Moving, or those specialized American expressions like Gentleman Jack. And that pricing gap between those two segments, it must be enormous. How does a distributor even manage inventory and strategy when the customer for that high-volume blended scotch might be paying, what, 10 times less than the customer ordering that single malt at the bar?
Well, it means, quite simply, there isn't one single whiskey customer. You have very distinct customer journeys, distinct budgets. The data really forces businesses to tailor their distribution networks. You need one network optimized to move volume affordably, efficiently. And you need another network that manages scarcity, brand cachet, the whole premium experience. The key business takeaway here is pretty stark. You absolutely must treat these as two separate markets. They need separate pricing, separate marketing strategies. If you confuse them, you basically guarantee inventory failure on one side or the other.
That clarity, that split between high-value items versus high-volume items is so key. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Moving from that high-end whiskey now to, well, the highest-end bubbly champagne. Because, conventional wisdom often positions premium champagne as this rare ceremonial thing, something reserved for maybe a once-a-year luxury purchase, right? This data just blows that idea up entirely.
Completely. It's not rare at all, not for certain places. It looks like a high-velocity staple for specific types of establishments. We saw multiple multi-bottle orders for top-tier premium brands like Veuve Clicquot and Moët and Chandon. And crucially, these orders were packed together, compressed within a tight 72-hour window, and they were coming directly from bars and some key distributors serving those bars.
That speed of purchase, ordering multiple bottles of Monet every couple of days, that suggests something pretty fundamental about the high-end service industry in Kampala, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The implication is unambiguous, really. For these upscale establishments, premium champagne isn't some luxury risk item sitting on the shelf gathering dust. It's a regular cash-positive inventory necessity. It has to be moving. It signals, I think, a sophisticated customer base, maybe post-recovery, that consumes premium bubbly consistently, not just on New Year's Eve. If a bar is ordering several bottles of Moët every 72 hours, that product is definitely moving off the menu. It's driving consistent, high profits night after night. It really proves the resilience of that high-end experience market.
Okay, so we've got this picture emerging. We have the high-volume sweet market, check. We have the segmented high-value premium market, check.
Yeah.
But the final piece of this sales ledger puzzle, it sort of reminds us why just tracking broad national trends can be a recipe for failure. We have to look at hyperlocal demand.
Exactly. This is where you see true customer loyalty, maybe specific applications for a product. It's the kind of demand that those big national marketing reports just completely miss. They can't capture this granularity.
And we found a really powerful, very localized case study right in the data. It involved a local brand, Uganda Waragi. We observed a single hotel establishment making 6 separate purchases of this local gin. And get this, they executed all 6 of those transactions on the very same day. 6 separate purchases
Oh, this
of the same local gin on one day from one place.
Yeah.
So that's a highly specific, very intense burst of demand for a local brand from a single location.
That kind of unique, localized purchasing behavior, it just screams for analysis, doesn't it? It strongly suggests a very specific, probably very steady, and definitely unique use case within that single establishment. I mean, it's highly unlikely they needed 6 different deliveries of the same product for general bar stock, right? Instead, it makes you think, okay, maybe Uganda Waragi is the absolutely non-negotiable essential ingredient for an immensely popular house cocktail they serve, or perhaps that specific venue caters to a highly loyal local clientele that just demands that particular brand. Nothing else will do. And for a competitor trying to get their gin into that hotel, this specific data point is gold. pure gold. It tells you that to make a dent in that hotel's drink menu, you don't need some splashy national campaign. You need
Okay.
to target that specific sexy, that specific demand signal. You need to understand why they buy that gin that often. It underlines that local brands play this crucial, often foundational role that just fails to register if you're only tracking the big global players. Okay, so if we connect this to the bigger picture, what the raw sales ledger does is essentially summarize the market into three highly distinct, powerful segments. Segments that are driving sales and profit in the Kampala CBD. First, you've got that high volume, price conscious, definitely sweet toothed mainstream market. Huge velocity there. Second, there's the high value, brand conscious premium segment, but it's internally segmented with different budgets for fine whiskey versus consistent champagne. And finally, you have these powerful hyperlocal loyalties. They drive specific, steady demands for local products, probably based on very particular applications or tastes.
So what does this all mean? I mean, ultimately, it means the ledger, the actual transaction data, paints a much more nuanced and frankly surprising story than any advertising campaign could ever sell you. You really have to forget the hype, forget the assumed hierarchy of brands that marketing tells us about. Real purchases, raw sales data, that's what truly reveals consumer behavior. That's where you see where the loyalty is actually built and ultimately where the profit is really being made.
Right. And critical thinking here requires us to look past those assumed cultural trends or what we think people should be buying. We have to focus solely on what the actual transactions tell us about how consumers are using these products, the application about accessibility, and about the segmented reality of tastes and budgets in a thriving, complex city like Kampala.
Well, this has been fascinating. A huge thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the surprising realities hidden away in the Kampala liquor market sales data.
Absolutely. And maybe this raises an important question for you, the listener. After seeing how different the actual sales ledger looks compared to the advertising, especially how much volume is driven by those accessible suite profiles, what surprising, maybe overlooked counterintuitive trends do you think might be hiding right now in the raw sales data of your own local market? Something to think about.